You are Locked On Rays, your daily Tampa Bay Rays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Rays podcast. My name is Ulysses Zambrano, and Kevin Weiss will be taking care of the bulk innings of this episode. Do not be afraid. We're the hosts of the Locked On Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day, no matter if we are together or if we are doing the opener in bulk episodes. You're there with us, and we're there with you Monday through Friday on all podcast platforms, audio, and of course, we're on YouTube too. You know, if you want to have some fun with the shenanigans that we have on YouTube, there's a great comment section every day, bopping, buzzing. It's pretty cool. Get some virtual friends that like the Rays by joining our YouTube channel. Subscribe, hit that like button. That really helps us beat the all-powerful, ever-knowing algorithm. So today we have a really fun episode because of you, the listeners. We have mailbag episodes, and they're our favorite because we can go anywhere with the question, and you guys provide that. So today there are two questions that we could dive really deep, and I will show you the one that Kevin will be doing on the second segment, third. It's by Ty McCann, who said, draft season is approaching. What grade would you give the Rays' last 10 first-round draft picks collectively? I mean, what a question. Thank you, Ty, as always. That's a tremendous question. We divided those, so I won't say particularly what I think of that, but, well, let's just say a lot of coulda, woulda, shouldas, and I'll leave it at that. But also, a lot of upside recently, and two names, I think, are pretty darn good in that list. So let's see what Kevin has to say about that. But for me, I'm going to be tackling this question from Luke Williamson, who says, only need to go 7-5 in the next 12 games to get to 49-47, which is where they were in 2018, and they won 90 games. However, this team needs to find a bat like they did in 2018, like Pham, to unlock that offense. Can it be Junior Caminero or an external candidate? But make no mistake, I do not think they can get to 90 without it. And there's a little nice, back and forth here. Dr. Matthew James Gray, an OG fan of the show, all the way from Australia. He says, not Pham. There's too many stories now of him being toxic for the clubhouse culture. A few younger guys have been resetting and getting good at bats in Durham. Maybe one of them. Luke replies, no, I don't want Pham. I'm just saying a bat that will have that kind of impact. Caminero, if he didn't get hurt, but too much time out. Mead is back on track, but I don't think the Rays want to bring him back until 2025. So not sure who to go after. See, that's the kind of community that we have built here at Locked On Rays. Like, that's a great back and forth. So thank you, Luke. Thank you, Dr. Gray, for just, having a good rapport and a good back and forth there with Luke. So that math of going 7-5 and being at the same position that the Rays were in 2018 should give us hope. It should give us a little bit of like, okay, well, maybe things are not as bad as we made them out to be. Definitely, the problem with the 2024 season is the expectations going in. We expected this team to dance between 86 and 92, which is above, obviously, 500. But they haven't played above 500 ball basically all season. They're right now dancing at 542 and 42, and it's taken them a while to kind of get over the hump. And then once they get to 500, then they go back down 3 to 4 games below. So it's been a really tough season for Rays fans to create some momentum and some positive attitude of like, oh, they're definitely a playoff contender. Now, we know this team better than anybody, right? Rays fans. So we know the kind of talent that is in that clubhouse, and it's a lot. It's plenty. Can it be done? Of course it can be done. There's still plenty of baseball left where these guys can do what Luke says, which is get to 90 wins. But they have to start now. There is no more, it's kind of like that kid, that's a procrastinator. Oh, you got to write the essay for Friday, and it's 20 days out. And he's like, it's fine, got time. And not until it's Friday morning, 4:30 a.m., and you still have the blinking Word doc staring you at the face. Let's not do that with this team. This team has 3 months of baseball where they can finally get out of their shell, kind of explode offensively like they haven't. And that's kind of what Luke is saying. I agree with Luke on the offensive concerns. This team hasn't shown consistent offense throughout the season. They showed in spurts, and you can see what it could be, but it hasn't been consistent because, they go nuts for a couple series and then it goes missing for 3. So the lack of consistency offensively has been tiring, to be quite frank, to watch. It's rough. Now, Luke does mention Junior Caminero. I think the earliest that Junior would be available to come back from a grade 2 left quad strain, okay? He has to do rehab. He has to get playing time in Durham. He has to do well in Durham. Look, if the guy comes back in 2 weeks and in Durham and he's hitting 150 and, nothing to show for it offensively, he ain't getting a call up. Like, you're not going to do that. So all of these things have to go right. The rehab, the playing time in Durham, the production. I think that merits a call up, best case scenario, mid-August. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. It's mid-August. Now, some of you are like, no way. No way. 2 games in Durham, and then they'll give him the call up. I'm sorry. We can definitely agree to disagree there because I don't think that Junior Caminero is going to be playing with the Rays before August 10th. There's no way. No way. No bleeping way. Now, head it down in the comments. Do you think the Rays are going to take a chance and be a little bit more aggressive? I don't think so. I really, really don't. But let's play with that scenario. Junior Caminero comes up August 13th. Now you could be saying, it's like 5 weeks of baseball. Can you really change the trajectory of a team? Can you really show off in a month worth of baseball to make a change? And I will tell you, bleep, yeah, you can. Don't forget what Randy Arozarena did in 2020, not in the playoffs. I know everybody thinks about Randy in the playoffs because it was just historic. It really was. That's the adjective. It was historic. But let's think back at what he did from August 30th, when he got that call up in 2020, until September 27th. Okay, so August 30th to September 27th, basically a month of baseball before the playoffs. Randy hit 288, 377 on base, a 678 slugging. That is a 1055 OPS. 1.055 OPS. The dude raked, and he was killing it. So, and he was a force. And I know Brandon Lau was also a force in that lineup, which is something I want to get to. But yes, you can make a change in your team. One guy can carry a team from 1 month. Yes, it can. He needs help, like Randy also had help with Brandon Lau there. But I think this team could potentially have a duo backing him up in Junior Caminero. Can that be Isak? I think it could be Isak. I think it could be Josh Lowe. And I think it could be Yandy Diaz, and it could be Randy Arozarena or Brandon Lau. See how the cast of characters is a little bit deeper than maybe in that 2020 season. And I know that we have seen these guys struggle in 2024. Lau, Lowe, Randy, and Yandy, they've struggled. And Isak had a tough June in the beginning. But you know what they can do. And can they go off? And if they go off together, this team can really catapult themselves into the playoffs. And boy, would that be fun. So thank you, Luke, for that question. I had a lot of fun going back into the time machine in 2020 and looking up those numbers and just having so much fun remembering what 2020 season was. I know it ended not like we all wanted, but it definitely gave us lifelong memories for sure. So again, we're going to talk about first round draft picks for the Rays in the last 10 years. Thank you to Ty McCann, and Kevin Weiss will be talking about that. But first, this episode of Locked On Rays is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those rival cities. I've talked about Boston, New York, Baltimore. You know, we might not like their baseball teams, but perhaps we like their cities, and maybe that's where Booking.com can help us. Okay, so from hotels that can look over stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. That's right. So book today on Booking.com, on this site, or in the Booking.com app today. You already know what I think about Game Time. Game Time is the place for where you can get any sort of tickets. You want to go to a comedy show, a theater, play, basketball, soccer, whatever it is, even baseball. Guess what? Game Time has it for you. And there's a special thing called Zone Deals, where you can save a lot of money when you choose a section, and then Game Time chooses the seats for you. Now, isn't that nice? Also, my favorite part is the panoramic view of where you're going to be sitting. Okay, right before you buy, you can see what you are going to be expecting, if it's comedy, if it's a play, or if it's a baseball game. Do I have the foul pole in my face? No, I don't. I'm going to buy it. And if I do have the foul pole in my face, well, it better be cheap. And Game Time can help you do that. So today, take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest priced, guaranteed.
All right, continuing with this mailbag episode, Ulysses gracefully taking the first portion of the show. I will lead things in the second half of the show. I know that, people aren't necessarily the biggest fans of the split episode deal between Ulysses and I as we tried to work on and collaborate our schedules. I will say this, though. We will not have an episode on Thursday, the Independence Day holiday. I will be at the beach enjoying myself. Much needed time off, and I'm sure Ulysses will be doing similar antics. But Friday, we do plan to reunite together, co-hosting an episode with much to talk about, i.e. the ongoing series that the Rays are putting forth right now, and also a major transaction Aaron Civale dealt to the Milwaukee Brewers, seemingly opening up a lane or multiple lanes for Shane Baz and Jeffrey Springs. So exciting stuff on that horizon. May and should hopefully yield to some more dominant starting pitching outings. And not to do too much on this, because I do want to get to this mailbag question from one of our OG listeners, Ty McCann, but I understand that people weren't the biggest fans of Aaron Civale since he arrived in a Rays uniform, because he had been so productive and consistent in a Guardians uniform, and just things did not really work to the expectation in a Rays unit. And plus, the Rays had to give up one of their top prospects at the time, Kyle Manzardo, to acquire him. But I'll also say this, that Kyle Manzardo, he got a shot in the big leagues with the Guardians and didn't really show much or anything with it, and had to get sent back down to the minors. So he was a guy, looked like, and maybe still is, a can't miss prospect, dominating at every level that he could since he was drafted out of Washington State. But once you get to the big leagues, it is night and day, even between the AAA ranks. And people out there say that there's never been a bigger gulf or net between AAA and the majors. And we're starting to see more of that presently right now. I mean, it wasn't too long ago that Josh Lowe got the cup of coffee with the big league club, and he struggled mightily, had to get sent back down, had to rework some things, comes back up, and we see where he is right now. So something tells me that Kyle Manzardo will find his way, will figure things out. It might just take a couple hundred at-bats before he settles in and gets things going. So we'll have much more on that trade and the impacts of that on Friday's show. In the meantime, I do want to get to this mailbag question from Ty McCann, always making us think, always putting us on our heels in a good way. We appreciate the questions and the prompts from Mr. McCann here. And the question is this: draft season is approaching. What grade would you give the Rays' last 10 first-round draft picks collectively? Really fun question from Ty McCann. And before we get into that, I do want to remind you this. You need to make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming and shouting. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So this is a really fun and unique question from Ty. And yeah, draft season is coming up upon us. We recently had the NBA draft. We recently had the NHL draft. Back in April, I believe, we had the NFL draft. And it's safe to say that the MLB draft doesn't drum up as much interest as those other ones, because usually guys drafted in those other leagues go right from their college or high school or wherever and get those opportunities in the pros. But we know with the MLB draft, it may take 3, 4, 5, 6 years before you see the fruits of the labor. I think a little bit of that is changing. However, maybe with the contraction of the minor league system, because it does seem, especially on the reliever front, that guys, maybe it's a quirky throwing lefty, like a Garrett Crochet or something like that. I honestly can't remember if Garrett Crochet is a lefty or righty, but a college arm that, may make the jump from college to the majors within a very short amount of time. So guys are getting pushed forward more quickly than ever before. Does that, that might be a question going forward. Can that impact, or will that impact their development going forward? That's something to find out and discover as the years go on. But I do want to preface this by acknowledging and noting that, there's really several question marks as of right now. I think at least one of these guys will be really, really good. Two of these guys may be really, really good, but it's still way too soon to tell for players that were selected really in the last 4 years. So, for example, if we're going to go year by year since, we'll go all the way back to 2014, because Ty said a decade, last 10 picks. 2023, Braden Taylor was taken 19th overall. 2022, Xavier Isaac was taken 29th overall. Carson Williams, 28th overall. Nick Bitsko, 24th overall. So those are 4 to be determined as of right now. From everything that we're seeing and watching and hearing, Xavier Isaac could be a stud. Carson Williams could be a stud. Braden Taylor could be a good role player in time. Nick Bitsko, I believe he was drafted in 2020 at the age of 17, and now I want to say he's got to be 22, and he's still in the very, very low levels of the minors because he's had a lot of injury setbacks, labrum, shoulder, all that. So
get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Price Picks community today. Price Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. And with the finals already over, the hoops action does not stop on Price Picks. The WNBA is still heating up with stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and all that Twitter feud. Well, you can follow along and have some fun using Price Picks. In fact, Price Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country. So today, get in on the fun and download the Price Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's Benjamin Franklin, baby. That's code LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDON on Price Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
We don't have answers to those as of right now, although we really should be bullish on Isaac and Williams. Now, if we go even further down the list, Greg Jones, drafted in 2019, number 22 overall. I think it's safe to say he's a miss. And the Rays traded him to the Rockies for a pitching prospect, Joe Rock. And Jones has actually had a cup of coffee in the majors, but for a dude that had unlimited tools, unlimited skill set, I just don't think he's going to pan out, and we can safely qualify that as a miss. Now, who knows? Maybe that the return that the Rays got, that guy turns into something, and then you can turn it into a hit. But right now, I'm going to say that the Rays whiffed on Greg Jones. And, you know, it's partially a circumstantial thing where he had to deal with and go through COVID and coming out of a small Division I school. I think it was just a tough transition for him. And we had really, really high hopes with his speed, his power, the ability to play shortstop, center field. And at best, he's a quad A player at this point. All right, go further down the line. Matt Liberatore, taken 16th overall. I'm going to say a hit. He was a hit because the Rays traded Matt Liberatore to acquire Randy Arozarena. And in and of itself, I'm good with that. I love that. And Liberatore is finally starting to establish himself and carve out a role with the Cardinals. So he really could have legitimate staying power. Keep going down. Brennan McKay, drafted out of Louisville, number 4 overall. This one's tough. He did make it to the majors, looked good for a time in the majors when he made his debut in 2019, and then got hurt. And he's been hurt time after time after time. And I think he still might be hurt. So he was a guy that, similar to Greg Jones, but even more so many accolades and accomplishments in college. Maybe one of the most decorated college baseball players of all time, between what he was able to do with his arm and with his bat and being that rarefied air two-way player. I mean, he won a Golden Spikes Award, and the Rays gave him a $7 million signing bonus. And based on him being drafted as high as he was, and the signing bonus that he was given, and the prestige that was attached to his name, he has not lived up to expectations. So if I want to be nice, I would say still to be determined, still need to roll out the string on that one, but I think we can safely qualify that as a miss. 2016, Josh Lowe, drafted number 13 overall. Hit. I think we can agree on that. 2015, Garrett Whitley, drafted 13th overall. He was a miss. I know he dealt with some injuries And then I think the highest level he made it to was AA, and then he became a minor league free agent and nobody picked him up. So as of this recording, I believe he's out of organized baseball, or if he's playing baseball, it might be in the Frontier League or something like that. So that is a miss. You gave the guy $3 million, didn't make it to the majors. And here's the thing with first round picks, 80% of first round picks make it to the majors. So at least give me something. At least get one at bat, pitch one inning, steal one base, get to the majors and do a little something. And then 2014, Casey Gillespie, drafted 20th overall out of Wichita State. He was a miss. He made it all the way to AAA, and then he flamed out after that. So the way I read it is we essentially have two guys that they hit on big time, Josh Lowe and Matt Liberatore, because Liberatore yielded Randy. We have four misses, Gillespie, Jones, McKay, and Whitley. And then we have four to be determineds, Nick Bitsko, Carson Williams, Xavier Isaac, Braden Taylor. So I would, and maybe I'm being a little bit too nice on this front, say C+, B- out of right now, as of right now, because I have hope for some of those other guys. But we also have to defend the Rays a little bit in the sense of, you know, it would be one thing if they missed on so many guys that they were drafting 5th, 8th, 10th overall. But because they've had so much success year in and year out, making 5 straight playoff appearances, they're picking at the bottom of the first round. In fact, in the last decade, half of the teams in the majors have had 4 more picks in the top 10. The Rays have had just 1. And that's also why you're not seeing as many homegrown players either. In fact, when the Rays began the month of May 2024, they had 0 homegrown players on their 26-man active roster. Now, some of that had to do with injuries, like Josh Lowe was injured at the time and Taj Bradley was injured at the time, but they still have very few homegrown players. And some of that too is, you know, year in and year out, even though the Rays are, you know, drafting at the bottom of the first round, more or less, they're still getting a lot of compensation picks, actually, because they lose guys to free agency and whatnot. I mean, there's so many guys that weren't drafted in the first round that wind up having an impact, like Shane McClanahan, for example, or Brandon Lau, or Taj Bradley, who was drafted in the 5th round. I think Brandon Lau was drafted in the 3rd round. But the Rays also do a good job with signing international, doing well in the international draft and international free agency as well. But they are not, they're not big prospect huggers. At least they haven't been in recent years. For example, like we said, they traded Liberatore for Randy. They traded Joe Ryan for Nelson Cruz. They traded Jesus Sanchez for Nick Anderson. They traded Kyle Manzardo for Aaron Civale. They traded Vidal Brujan. They traded many others as well. And I think the idea behind it is they feel more comfortable in seeing the data and analytics of professional ball players, and then maybe being able to tweak their skill set to match what they're trying to do. So really fun, interesting question from Ty there. Hope I gave some good context with all that. So yeah, I will be very curious to see how some of the guys that are still percolating and still marinating in the minors right now, what they can showcase, and hopefully they can hit it big, because we need some of those first round draft picks to do something. Because it's funny, you know, the Rays really had a good run there when they were in their suckage stage, when they drafted Evan Longoria and David Price and BJ Upton and others. And then when they got good and started drafting in the later portion of the draft, there was such a drought. I mean, I'm not even going to mention the Tim Beckham drafted number 1 overall thing, but when you go from 2009 to 2013, it's straight misses. LaVon Washington drafted 30th overall. He didn't even sign with the team. Josh Sale, 17th overall in 2010. He had some off the field issues, to say the least. Taylor Guerreri, 24th overall. I think he made it with the Blue Jays as a reliever for a time, but didn't make the impact that anybody expected. Richie Schaefer, Nick Chufo. So it was thin pickings from that perspective. I think this year the Rays will draft 19th overall. So I'll be curious to see what direction they take. Are they going to go college bat, college arm, high school bat, high school arm? Perhaps there's a catcher that they fall in love with that they can bring on into the organization. But yeah, the Rays have changed tide. I mean, they are either signing free agents on the cheap or trading for established big leaguers and not afraid to give up some of their prospects. And I think some of that has to do with the 40-man crunch and 26-man crunch that they have to deal with year in and year out. But they're not a team like the Orioles, the Tigers, or the Royals right now that are just decorated with homegrown talent and homegrown players, because those teams have been picking at the top of the draft year in and year out. So just wanted to throw that all out there. In the meantime, thank you all for listening. Thank you for bearing with us on the split episode series. We are trying to get back together, reunite again. No beef out there. It's just Ulysses and I's schedules have gotten very crazy as of late, and we're trying to find a good system to do our recordings together. So we'd appreciate if you keep that in mind going forward and keep listening. We love when you listen and interact with us. In the meantime, hope you all have a wonderful day. Stay safe, and we will talk to you on Friday.